Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. So mainly last time we conducted the first chapter and ended it. So this session today will be about the second chapter, which is about the workflow of visualization. So visualizing data even has its own workflow. It has its steps to take, which are presented as follows, and we will be conducting them in details. We have to visualize data, we ask questions, we determine the KPIs, and what's KPIs, we will be talking about that as well. We have the shape of the data, we have to even prepare data, and finally to visualize it again. So, clear, effective, and efficient thinking is the critical difference between a visualization that succeeds and one that doesn't. So you cannot just expect to land accidentally on a great solution, because that doesn't come as simple as that. You have got to go work for it. So in this chapter, we will outline the data visualization workflow that forms the basis of the structure and the content of this topic. So this workflow offers a creative and analytical process that will guide us from an initial trigger that instigates the need for a visualization through to developing your final solution. Also, you will learn about the importance of process thinking, breaking down the components of a visualization, the challenge also into sequenced, the chunks that will be manageable. Also, this chapter will be a recommendation for some practical tips and good habits also to ensure the workflow in the most effectively adopted way. So, what's the importance of the process? The decisions you will face will be, they will vary in the weight of their significance. Also, there will be some big choices, like maybe defining your editorial angles, selecting the best fit chart type, because you know that will be hard even to make the appropriate choice. Many seemingly small ones, such as picking the precise shade of gray for a chart's axis labels. So the process of creating a visualization generally, it follows the Pareto principle, whereas or maybe that we talk about 20% of decisions made have implications for about 80% of the final visible design. So however, just because some decisions will appear more significant in the final output, as visualizers, we need to attend to every single decision equally. So caring about every single detail, precision, and accuracy. Now, one of the main mental barriers to overcome for those new to the field is to acknowledge what the pursuit of perfect in data visualization is always unfulfilled. So there are better and there are worse solutions. So we have two kinds of solutions, as we say. We have the better ones and we have the worse ones. But of course, there is no perfect. Perfect exists only in artificial vacuum. It is free of pressures. It has no constraints. That is not real life, as you know, in even every kind of stuff that you do. There will always be some kind of forces pushing and pulling you in different directions. There may be frustrating even shortcomings in the data that you will have to work with, or limitations with your technical capabilities. So as discussed, people, your audience members, they introduce a huge inconsistencies. So accepting the absence of perfection, it helps us also unburden ourselves somewhat from the consistent nagging sense that we missed out on discovering the perfect solution, that this can prove quite like a liberating way. So So these are the stages of the data visualization. These are the observations that we will be even going through. We have the stage of formulating a brief. We have the stage of working with data, establishing your editorial thinking, and developing your design solution. So to go into these details, we will first talk about pragmatic. This process, it aims to provide a framework for thinking rather than instructions for learning. So the framework is for getting ideas and thinking about it, but it's not maybe that much of learning. As described in this introduction, there are very few universal rules to rely upon. While the comfort, of course, provided by rules is what many might seek at the beginning of their learning journey. A flexible pragmatism beats dogmatism in any situation. So useful rules do not exist in visualization, but they are often related to micro-level matters. Reducing the randomness of your approach, so this is the second point, it's about that the value of the process is that it guides our entry and our closing points. So where and how to begin your work, as well as how and when it will be finished. So you have to always define these phases. When you are new to data visualization, of course, the sheer extent of things to think about can be quite an overwhelming prospect. This workflow, of course, approach, it aims to break down activities into a connected system of thinking that will help to organize and preserve the cohesiveness of your activities. So the process, it will incrementally lead you toward developing a solution. So you'll be able to develop, of course, your own solutions with that, with each stage building on the last and the informing the next. So the core purpose of the approach is to give you a greater sense of the options that exist at each stage and provide you with better information with which to make your choices. Now to talk about this schema represents the step-by-step visualization process. So I like to add the schema for your concern. The first step is, of course, collecting the data. It's the first and most important step of data visualization, which is to gather data, clean your data to remove whatever is inappropriate or fill the missing ones. Choose a chart type. What's the type of chart type you want to work on? You have to prepare, of course, your data, and you have to finally visualize your data. So to carry on, we will talk also about the protect experimentation. It's very natural to want to reduce wasted effort. But at the same time, it's absolutely vital to seek opportunities in the right places for imagination to blossom, that in reality, many of the projects you will work on will not necessarily rely on much creative input. There will be projects that have pressures on time, a need to compromise on experimenting in favor of the desire of efficiency. There will be subjects or data sets that you work with that are just not congruent with overt creative thinking. It's about striking a balance and affording time on those activities that will bring the right blend of value to suit each context. Next of that, we will see how to facilitate the adaptability and iteration. So this workflow is characterized as a design process rather than a procedure. So a good process should facilitate the adaptability and remove the inflexibility of a defined procedure of operation. Although the activities are introduced and presented in this chapter in a linear fashion, and maybe there is much iteration that takes place also. There will be times when we will have to revisit decision, maybe go over them again and again, redo activities in a completely different way given that you have discovered further down the line, because maybe you have got to better stuff to think about. So if you make mistakes or bad calls, and everyone does naturally, it is important to fail gracefully but recover quickly. So you have to have a fast recovery. You will need to be able to respond to changes in circumstances and accommodate their impact as fast as you can. So a good process cautions the impact of situations arising like this one. So we have the second or the third point, which is that the first occasion is not the last one. Of course, it's important to note that the tasks you face at each stage in life or each stage in the process will be represented or they will represent the first occasion you pay attention to these matters, but they will not be the final ones. There's something that we say of a trickle-down effect here. So many of the concerns you will be facing or faced with at the start of the challenge, they will likely continue to echo in your thoughts right through till the end. So some things are just not possible to close that easily. Take the ongoing demands of profiling who your audience are and what they might need. So we say that often. That thinking starts early and should actually never drop off your radar. So this idea should even never, you should never drop this idea from its existence. The nature of the process gives you the best chance of keeping all the plates spinning that need to be spun, knowing which ones can be left to drop and when. So the timing here also is very important. Always the same process. So the range of visualization challenges you will face in your career will be, or they will vary, so they will change. Even if you are producing the same work every month, no two projects will provide the same experience. Just having an extra amount of data means it has a new shape or size. It is different. So some projects you work on will involve fairly simple data. Others will involve a huge complex data. So in some cases, you will have perhaps 2 hours or 2 days to deliver a solution. And in others, you might even have 2 months. The key thing is that the process you follow will always require the same activities in the same sequence, regardless of its size, its speed, complexity, or whatever might vary. But the main difference is that any extremes in the circumstances you face will amplify the stresses at each stage of the process and place greater demands on the need for though through effective and timely decision makings. So if you look at this chart right here, or at this figure, this is the construction and the interpretation of data visualization. So you see that it's how we go on, it's how we start, okay? So here on the right, we see the visualizations. We see here the variables and the graphic symbols. And these are here the interactions or the steps of it. So as you see, it goes through and out. We have to acquire, to analyze, visualize, design the data overlay that will lead to deployment, that will lead to interpretation, and back to acquire, then analyze, and then visualize. So this is the workflow of visualizing the data. Now, how to partition your mindset. So this is a very important part, and this is a part that maybe takes a lot of work, and is very important that we haven't maybe given its right through the time, or we don't majorly give it its right. So if you look at this, you will acquire different mindsets. You have the thinking, the doing, the making. So let's go further into each and every part. The thinking part, the duties here, they are, or they will be conceptual in nature. They require imagination and judgment, such as formulating curiosity, defining the audience needs, reasoning your editorial perspectives, and making decisions about viable design choices. Now, the doing thing is that these are practical tasks that will still engage the brain, obviously, but they can manifest themselves through more hands-on activities like sketching ideas and concept learning about a certain subject, through researching, gathering, handling data. So all of that will bring us to the making part. So these involve the constructive and technical activities that specifically relate to the production cycle as you face the challenge of translating promising and so well considered design concepts into effecting and turning them into working solutions. So to talk about this final point, which will be the process in its practice. You have to manage the progress and the resources. You have to have good planning. Time and resource management, they keep a process cohesive and progressing. So you will keep the progress going. They even represent the lubricant, and you will rarely have the luxury of working on a project that has no defined end date, and so adhering to imposed or self-imposed timescales is especially important. You have to have a room to think. So this is the most important point. This is your comfort zone. On the theme of task duration and progress, it's important to build in the capacity to think. So the notion of brain states is relevant in this case. In particular, the alpha state, which kicks in most commonly when we are particularly relaxed. Being in the state helps to heighten your imagination, learning, and the thought of the process. So I'm going to give an example about this one, which is the shower example. So maybe and maybe not, many of us, if you think about it, we like to shower, or maybe we like to think in the shower. We like to come up with ideas in the shower. So that's typically one of our kinds. This would be a comfort zone for us to deal with. The heuristics to support decisions. So as we have discussed, there will be occasions when the best choices does not present itself. When time is pressurizing you and when you will need to make a call, you might have to occasionally rely on heuristic techniques that help to speed up your decision making at certain stages. You have the pen and paper. The humble pairing of pen and paper will prove to be a real ally throughout your process. I will not over sentimentally claim this is the most important tool combination, because unless you are producing artisan hand-drawn work, you will have other technical tools that would probably rise up the importance list. You have the note-taking, which is even very important, whether it is via pen or paper or in Word, Google document. Note-taking is a vital habit to get into. That is very important. This is about preserving records of important details, such as, or what you can take notes of. It's the information about the sources of data you are using, calculations or manipulations you have applied to your data, assumptions you have made, data description, particularly if explanation have been offered to use verbally by somebody who knows data well, questions you have yet to get answers to, the answers you did get to your questions, the terminology, task list and which list of futures of ideas you would like to consider to pursue, issues or problems you can foresee, websites or magazines that you saw and gave you a bit of inspiration, ideas you have or had or rejected, note-taking is easier said than it's done. And I'm among personally the least natural note takers to roam this earth, maybe, but I have forced it into becoming a habit and a valuable one at that. Next, we talk about the communication part. It's a two-way activity. First of all, it's about listening to stakeholders, which are the clients or the colleagues, and your audience. So what do they want? What do they expect? What ideas do they have? And in particular, what knowledge do they have about your subject? Secondly, communication is about speaking to others. So you have to present your ideas, update progress, seeking feedback, sharing your thoughts about possible solutions as well, and promoting and selling your work.